This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The top 5 reasons why college football desperately needs playoff expansion, next on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Gordon. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison.
Brady gets terrific. Throws it and a touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast as we continue to persevere through the coronavirus SARS-2 pandemic. Hopefully, all of you are staying safe. And in the midst of not having any real-time sports news, we are taking a look at some of the big debates around sports, particularly the University of Michigan and college football and basketball. And this week, we're going to look at more of a broader topic. The top 5 reasons why this time, college football's playoff must be expanded. Here's why we think college football desperately needs an expanded playoff. Our first reason, number 5, the sport simply doesn't have a playoff now. It has an invitational with no objective rationale for how you earn an invite. We don't really know any of the criteria. They're not very transparent. There's no RPI. There's no net ranking. We don't have any strength of schedule component. We don't really know. We just know a baker's dozen of people get together off the record in some kind of star chamber. They supposedly step out when a team that they have a bias for or with because of an affiliation is discussed, but we don't really know that. We don't really know anything. There's no schedule that you can make that makes you think, hey, if I play a schedule this good, I'm in. We don't really know anything. There isn't a playoff now. What you have is an invitational, and that invitational couldn't be more subjective because there's no rational reason for why you do or don't get in. We don't really know. And if you watch this thing on a week-to-week basis, they basically just retcon it, reverse engineer it without any intellectual consistency to come up with whatever justification they want for the top 4 teams they have that week. So the number one reason why we've got to have, or the first reason we got to have playoff expansion is because we have to have an actual playoff. We don't have a playoff now. Reason number 4, the sport desperately needs more meaningful games. The problem we have in college football right now, there's just not enough meaningful games. And if you look at what's happened in the bowl games, and attendance was already dwindling, but it's tanking now. Essentially, we've got guys sitting out major bowl games now. It just doesn't matter. Unless it's the Rose Bowl and or a playoff game, it's just not relevant to a lot of guys. So, I mean, if I would have told you when Christian McCaffrey set out the Sun Bowl that in 4 years we were going to see guys sit out New Year's 6 games, you'd have told me I was nuts. But we're seeing it on a perennial basis now. There's not enough meaningful games. You need to have more meaningful postseason games. And therefore, with more meaningful postseason games, there will be more meaningful regular season games because that's more of an opportunity to make it to the postseason. You won't water down the regular season because the NFL doesn't do that. The NFL doesn't have a watered down regular season because of the playoff. We need more meaningful games in college football. Reason number 3, the sport desperately needs more parity. Now, parity is not the same as everybody gets a trophy. But even by college football's historical standards, and I happen to be a fan of the winningest team of all time, really the very first dynasty in college football history, Fielding Yost's point-a-minute squads at the turn of the century that brought the Rose Bowl to the nation for the very first time, and then dominated the game so much they darn near canceled it and never played it again. Right? This is a sport that is built on tradition, dynasties, traditional rivalries, traditional powers. Now it's become a plutocracy. Essentially, if you're not one of 3 or 4 teams every year right now, the idea that you're going to win the playoff is just not realistic. And you can't have a sport that has national appeal where that is the case. So I don't believe in false binary choices, right? We already talked about, hey, the opposite of you don't automatically water down your regular season by having more playoff teams. Look at the NFL. Every week it feels like you live and die with your team because there's still only 16 games and they have a playoff. Their regular season's very meaningful. The same thing will be true of college football with more playoff teams as well. Secondly, we don't have to fall for the false binary choice of, well, I guess if your team can't make it, you want them to get a trophy. There's a vast chasm between youth soccer, we don't keep score, and a plutocracy where the same 3 or 4 teams are essentially in this thing to win it every single year. You need democratization. That's the difference. That's what parity brings you, democratization in college football. It's no coincidence that when college basketball expanded the tournament at the end of the John Wooden era of dynasties and dominance with UCLA, we instantly saw more parity in college basketball. It's not a coincidence. The first year we went to 64 teams in the NCAA tournament, 1985. A number 8 seed, Villanova, won the entire thing. More teams need to feel like they have a realistic shot of both getting in and then winning it as well. The next reason college football desperately needs expansion to the playoff. By giving automatic bids to conference champions, you reinforce the importance of the regular season. Even with that example from a couple of years ago, hey, what if Northwestern with 4 losses would have upset Ohio State? Well, number one, how did Northwestern get to the Big Ten championship game? They had to win their division, which put an emphasis on the regular season. But then you know what? If you end up beating Ohio State on a neutral field in a football game, you earned your way in. Got no complaints. I mean, what's wrong with letting teams earn their way in? This goes back to the very first point. You're not earning your way in now. We don't know how to get in. Nobody knows. It's all subjective. How about we let the teams, the players, the coaches, how about we let them decide their own fate? And then you have a committee come in and you've got 2 or 3, depending on where things stand with group of 5 teams or Notre Dame. You have 2 or 3 at-large berths a year. And that's where you have your committee come in to subjectively right subjective wrongs. But you need to put more emphasis on the regular season to know, hey, if Virginia had beat Clemson last year in the ACC championship game, were they going to be in the playoff? No. So then what are they really playing for here? It would make conference championships matter more. And if you make conference championships matter more, then the regular season also matters more. And the number one reason that we need the playoff to be expanded in college football, the players and coaches should know they can earn their way in rather than being subjected to the subjective whims of a non-transparent selection committee. And yes, that argument is essentially a summation of every other argument I've already given, but that's because it's the main argument. That's the main point. We don't have a playoff now. This would actually give us one. Well, what do you think? You can let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Michigan Podcast and every day at WolverineDigest.com, where we keep you up to date on the latest with the Maize and Blue. Also, like, rate, and subscribe, whether you're watching us this week on YouTube. Please share these links, or you're listening to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Please keep those positive reviews and subscriptions coming, and thank you to all of you that have done that already as well. Have a great week. Stay safe. Until next week, go Blue.